in day number 1, we saw some pretty big tricks coming out from him. I mean, we also saw Mirror Herb Tauros end up getting activated there. Maybe not to the same, maybe to the success that Gio would have liked to have seen the first time, but then the pivoting for the Gothitelle in that game number 3 to be able to secure him that set was so cool.
It just makes me really happy to see Gio competing again. I know he took a couple of years off, and you know, he's always like, you know, I haven't really been that great at the game, but he's had incredible performances. You know, top 16 in the world in 2016, multiple regional top cuts, but he is looking for kind of the championship, right? He's done super well at a lot of these events, but hasn't actually quite been able to get first place, and so amazing run for him here, and he's going to be going up against Aaron, who, first of all, has an absolutely incredible name. Big fan of that. And second of all,
I wonder why.
has, I think, one of the coolest remaining teams in this tournament. We haven't been able to feature him yet, and I'm so glad we get to get him on stream.
Yeah, and this is a player that really started to break out during Sword and Shield. We saw quite a few newer players enter into the mix during that game, and you could see there that he did end up getting top 8 in the Players' Cup 4 online tournament, and also at North American International Championships last year, still remains skillful enough to get a top 64 for that format. Finds himself here in the top 8 versus Gio, and with a pretty exceptional team. I mean, we were able to preview it just a little bit there, but the Dreadnought and the Pelipper being able to play was a very strong duo together, but also how much utility that Hariyama and that Farigiraf are going to provide for this team as well.
Yeah, to see which mode Aaron goes with here, because I think both Rain and Trick Room are solid.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get this best of 3 started. It will be the Meowscarada and the Farigiraf to kick things off here for Aaron, but Gio now with the Tauros and the Golden Go on his side.
So one of the things to definitely watch out for in this matchup, by the way, not relevant here on turn 1, is but Tauros potentially activating Defiant on King Gambit and then getting the Mirror Herb activation as well. It allows for some very interesting options. But yeah, turn 1 here, Tauros puts on a little bit of offensive pressure against both Golden Go right now with that Make It Rain, looking very, very powerful as well. Meowscarada here is kind of a standard Focus Sash variant, but it has U-turn, so you have the ability to potentially U-turn out and just set up that Trick Room, or you could just go for knockoff. But that Intimidate's going to be really, really nice on a Meowscarada. Make sure that you can't just get a surprise knockout, for example, with knockoff onto the Golden Go.
Yeah, I mean, this turn is going to be really important just to see if you're going to be able to even just figure out some of the damage calculations of whether or not you can secure a knockout onto that Farigiraf. But it will be a Terra to that Golden Go to kick things off for this first turn. And the Steel type has not really been a surprise too much in this tournament so far. The knockoff, though, here onto the Golden Go, you are going to knock off the Life Orb, but it does keep itself relatively safe as...
Oh my goodness!
I mean, the critical hit, so that's a ton of damage going into the Farigiraf, but that almost ensures the cleanup here from the Golden Go's Make It Rain, and that is just absurd amounts of damage across the board.
Yeah, I don't know if it was even a crit from the Tauros. I think that was just a regular Flare Blitz there, which I am just shocked to see how, like, I feel like that's the most damage I've seen Tauros do throughout the course of this event, but it makes sense. Like, fire typing just in general, Flare Blitz is one of the strongest offensive attacks you can have, but I think the play from Gio's end makes a lot of sense. You're just trying to go all in on denying Trick Room, because I think Trick Room's actually really hard for his team to fight against. That's why I was thinking if you're Aaron, you might want to go with the Hariyama lead instead, so you can pressure with Fake Out onto at least, for example, the Tauros. But I mean, yeah, I think one of the things I'm actually curious about is how bulky is Farigiraf, how well can it take a Life Orb, Steel Terra boosted Make It Rain, and so I think Gio in a really, really solid spot after that turn 1 gets a lot of damage off. The knockoff is somewhat valuable into Golden Go, but Meowscarada can actually do very much into that slot now subsequently. There's the Sucker Punch pressure at least from the King Gambit, but I think Gio off to a really strong start, especially with the ability to deny Trick Room.
Yeah, I mean, the Sucker Punch is still going to be dealing a ton of damage, but the fact that the Golden Go is Terra Steel right now does remove a bit of that super effective pressure. Yeah, this is a tough spot for Aaron to be in for this second turn of the game. Gonna go ahead and just do a manual switch out of that Meowscarada in favor of the Pelipper. So now that is going to be in play here, just to be able to keep that King Gambit a bit more safe with that Rain active. But we're gonna see Gio make another switch as well. That Tauros switching out for that Talonflame.
Yeah, and Talonflame being able to put on a little bit pressure with the potential Will-O-Wisp in subsequent turns, and one thing that Gio uses this Tauros is actually to activate Defiant on King Gambit and then, you know, get your own boosts, right? And so it's interesting, like, Aaron actually committed to neither like the Trick Room mode or the Rain mode fully. Like no Hariyama or Dreadnought. I was expecting at least like Hari plus Photograph or Pelipper plus Dreadnought, but instead it's kind of like a pseudo combo of both. So Aaron has the ability for both speed controls, but like you've already given up the potential for Trick Room here, and we're going to see the flying Terra here and Brick Break into Dragonite. It's an amazing switch in there by Geo.
Yep, super defensive switch, and the Terra already I think is a little surprising, but makes a bit of sense just trying to get away from that steel type weakness that two Pokemon right now on Geo's side will be trying to threaten that King Gambit with. But, you know, Aaron maybe still has a chance here. The Will-O-Wisp
even with Wide Lens misses.
Oh my god, I remember calling you out yesterday and I was like, Aaron, how do you feel about Wide Lens being on the Talonflame to try to help the accuracy of Will-O-Wisp? You shrugged it off, and this is why it wasn't even enough to be able to secure the Will-O-Wisp here. And unfortunately for Talonflame, we'll be on the receiving end of that Hydro Pump for the Pelipper as well. An unfortunate turn here for Geo to take, but that Kowtow Cleave is going to be a crit too. So far ahead, but just like that, the tides have turned.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate for Geo. I thought he positioned this game immaculately, right? Like, you have the Will-O-Wisp, and the King Gambit here on the opposing side is actually Assault Vest as well. So, you know, like, you have to either eat up the burn, or you switch into Meowscarada. Meowscarada doesn't want to eat up the burn either. None of the Pokemon at this point actually have the Protect as well, right? And so it's very clear, like, offensive positioning. This time around, we actually will see at least the Mirror of activation, which is pretty cool. But I think one of the things that we actually saw when Geo played previously was kind of the amount of pressure that King Gambit in the rain can apply. And you've activated Defiant now. The Tauros actually isn't really that strong given the rain. And so, yeah, I think this game would look completely differently if either the Will-O-Wisp hit or the critical hit doesn't happen, but both of them happen. And yeah, it's just a really unfortunate turn for Geo. And I'm trying to think, you know, what's the path to victory now? Because you can just pressure Sucker Punch onto the Dragonite slot. So, you know, Geo looks like he's kind of one step ahead of that, and it's like, okay, I might want to consider switching out the Dragonite. Pelipper also just puts on pressure against the Tauros here as well. So, yeah, that was just super, super unfortunate, and even with Wide Lens, you can still miss that Will-O-Wisp.
Yeah, that is really, really unlucky for that turn, but you will see the Golden Ghost swap go through, so maybe if Aaron is to be able to use Sucker Punch into that slot, you will be able to keep the Golden Ghost safe, but look at that, Aaron just not falling for it. He's gonna go with that Tailwind here, now has that speed in his control.
Oh, for a second I was like, is Sprint Break going into that slot, but it's still a really solid play. I think, yeah, at that point you were at risk of just eating up the Dragon Claw from Pelipper, which is, of course, pretty scary, and so nicely done to kind of get one step ahead, and, yeah, just go for the Tailwind. I think with the Tailwind up now, the speed control is actually looking really scary because Pelipper is putting on a lot of offensive pressure, and given that Tauros protected, you can, like, pretty safely launch a Hurricane into that slot, for example.
Well, protect you from the Golden Ghost, so where are these attacks from Aaron going to come from? It will be the Hurricane into the Tauros, super effective damage, super effective knockout, and King Gambit is just going to continue to thrive on this field with the Brick Break pressure into this Steel Terra-type Golden Go. That's going to be really rough. At least Dragonite is able to come back in here, and especially when it has that Choice Band, it's going to have to lock itself into something. Maybe you're able to go for an Extreme Speed, just get that priority activated into the Pelipper, try to remove that from the field, but Golden Ghost still playing it safe here, knows that it's going to have to try to survive.
Yeah, and so, like, at this point, what's tricky is you know that the Dragonite's Choice, and so you can very safely target that slot, so we'll see if Aaron decided to go for it. But nope, it is going to be the Brick Break, yep, into the Golden Ghost slot, and so it's going to be kind of a 2v2 finish now. The Extreme Speed pressure is actually looking pretty scary, right? It actually has a higher priority than that Sucker Punch as well, so you can't Sucker Punch successfully with the Extreme Speed. So Extreme Speed can, of course, target down the Meowscarada, and I've seen Geo win these before, so going for some consecutive protects right now. We'll see if he gets another one.
We get a double protect. That would be a huge way for Geo to be able to get back into this game. The one thing is that, I mean, Aaron's Meowscarada does have the ability to go for a protect here, so if it's able to protect away the Extreme Speed, and Aaron calls this correctly to go after the Dragonite, then that's pretty big. Yep. So here's the protect from the Meowscarada. What about this King Gambit? Golden Go is not going to get that second protect in a row, but the Extreme Speed too, that's just going to get protected away. So where does this King Gambit put its attacking pressure? The Brick Break into the Golden Go does secure that knockout.
Yeah, I think in that position, you basically, do you consider like the protect on Meowscarada? I think one play that Gio could actually consider is saying, okay, I'm going to just hard read your Meowscarada protecting right now, and I'm just going to try to double up onto the King Gambit. But given that Tailwind was still up, I wouldn't be surprised if King Gambit actually just had enough speed investment to naturally outspeed and get the Brick Break KO there. But I think this is a game where you got to kind of sit back and reflect if you're Gio and be like, okay, what went wrong for me? And he honestly got incredibly unlucky in this game. Like, missing that wide lens Will-O-Wisp in itself was a really big deal, because King Gambit, like, should have essentially just been shut down throughout this endgame, and then also getting crit that turn. So I thought that, Gio had a solid game plan. I thought he played the early game well, and sometimes you just get those really unlucky turns. And so, but also credits to Aaron, because he found a really nice kind of path back into the game, and especially that Tailwind turn with Pelipper, I think, was huge, because it's really scary to go for that when you're facing a potential Dragon Claw from the opposing Dragonite. So Tailwind was really critical. You set up that speed control, and you're actually able to then outspeed everything on Gio's end.
Yeah, I mean, Gio was still able to claw his way back into that game number 1, but he also got some valuable information there. Despite not being able to shut down the King Gambit, you saw that he went for the extreme speed into the King Gambit slot when it was Terra'd, and so you now have a little bit more of an understanding of maybe how that King Gambit is trained to be able to go into this game 2 and potentially game 3 if he's able to get back into this one.
Yeah, I'm curious if Aaron makes any adjustments here, because I thought the lead was just stronger on Gio's end, and I do think if Gio hits that Will-O-Wisp, this is a really different game. And so when wondering if Aaron's maybe willing to commit a little bit more into one of the two modes, because I feel like
it's time for game number 2 here in this best of 3 in the top 8 of the San Diego Regional Championships. We've got Aaron now heading onto the field there with the Meowscarada and the Pelipper. So we'll be switching up that strategy from that first game, but it's time for Shadow Tag to make an appearance here as Gio leads with that Gothitelle and Golden Go.
Yeah, what's interesting here is that there's no potential protect from the Pelipper side, and so you can guarantee it not moving and potentially even KO it, if you want to go for Fake Out onto the slot. You do have to worry about the potential knockoff from Meowscarada, but a Steel Terra will essentially get around that. And so, yeah, I see Gothitelle and the Golden Go. I wonder if that was kind of an answer into the potential Trick Room combination that maybe Gio recognized, hey, Aaron might play towards. But Aaron decides not to go with the Trick Room. This time actually going with a much more fast-paced, combo with the Meowscarada, and this time replacing the Furgaraf with the Pelipper. Pelipper, of course, has the pressure to set up Tailwind, but this is one of the classic scenarios where I think Shadow Tag is really nice. You trap the opposing side in, and they can't very easily bypass this Fake Out with no protect.
Yeah, I mean, even still, on top of that, too, we will see the Golden Go Terrascalize again, so really early offensive pressure, but also just kind of trying to make sure that you're able to hit something maybe with the Hypnosis, if the Gothitelle is able to stick around, especially when the Meowscarada is going to knock off into the Golden Go. So Life Orb being removed again, but still this Make It Rain is going to hurt. I do like the Fake Out there. I mean, Meowscarada being on the receiving end of that is still going to be brought down to its Focus Sash. But maybe you put Pelipper in a knockout range here before it's able to set up Tailwind.
Yeah, that's a lot of damage onto both ends. Critical hit there, actually, and Pelipper's going to heal back with the Citrus Berry. But the Golden Go on this team actually has the Thunderbolt, and Pelipper is strapped in right now, and it can't protect. So you actually have a pretty safe Thunderbolt into that slot. Looks like Gio's opting for that. What's interesting is what you do with the Gothitelle, or you, like, the Meowscarada on the opposing end actually does have U-turn, and of course it can knock off into Gothitelle as well. So, you've already committed your Terra defensively with the Golden Go, so it's not that easy to just get around the knockoff here. But yeah, I think certainly multiple options can consider switching out Gothitelle. Looks like Gio's opting for potential Hypnosis here, which would cover for a U-turn option, but nope, no U-turn, just a protect here.
Yep. I mean, the U-turn would have been really, really scary into that Gothitelle for sure, but 2 protects on the board now, and Gothitelle going for the Hypnosis, but will not be able to find its mark since that Meowscarada did go for that protect. And the Hurricane here, okay, just trying to get some damage down on the Gothitelle to provide Aaron an opening. It will confuse this Gothitelle, so turns here on forward for Gio until that gets resolved might be a bit tricky.
Yeah, I actually thought that last one was really interesting. I think Gio essentially was like, I'm going to play a little bit more passive, and if you U-turn out on a Hypnosis into that slot, you are in such bad shape. He intentionally did not take the knockout on Pelipper to deny like a free switching, because Pelipper is kind of in an awkward spot right now, but Aaron kind of responds accordingly, saying, I'm not going to get trapped by this Hypnosis, like, I don't want to get caught off guard by it. Meowscarada is not nearly as important to me at this point relative to a Pokemon that can switch in and be in the back, and this was a really, really nice play by Aaron, I thought, because now the Meowscarada can just actually pressure the Gothitelle for a knockout with that knockoff.
Yeah, and at this point, too, I mean, Gio's just going to go ahead and give up that pressure from the Gothitelle. Also doesn't want to deal with the confusion either, because that could spell disaster. And now the Intimidate coming through from that Toro switch in. It's going to help out Meowscarada just a little bit, but still the Flower Trick just going to bypass that with those critical hits. That's going to start to pay off for sure. But Golden Go is able to land this Thunderbolt. So, Pelipper's out of here.
Yeah, definitely heating up a critical hit on the way, but I'm not sure that really quite mattered.
I don't think that one matters.
But,
the math checks out.
Yeah, the math does check out. Tauros is able to come in here, you know, get that Intimidate off, as you mentioned, doesn't matter as much. And I think nicely done by Aaron to actually go for Flower Trick there rather than knockoff, kind of expecting potentially the Tauros to switch in there. And, you know, the Flower Trick would still do decent damage onto Gothitelle if it were to stay in, right? And so, especially because this is overgrown Meowscarada as well. So, King Gambit now pivots in. We still have a potential Terra from the opposing side, but there is the speed advantage right now for Gio's side, right? You do have to worry about Meowscarada, of course, going for an attack onto either slot, but I think Golden Ghost Steel Terra is just really well positioned right now. So, I guess you could maybe double up into the Golden Go slot, and I think Aaron here might want to consider that defensive Terra on the King Gambit, go into Flying type, and yeah, get rid of some of your weaknesses.
Yeah, you still have, again, valuable information if the King Gambit's going to Terrasilize to a Flying type. Like, how much are these physical attacks really going to do? How is it trained? But, you know, you still have to be careful of that Brick Break that King Gambit does have in its moveset. But here's a Terra. Where's it going? Should be that King Gambit if it wants to be able to survive some of these attacks.
Yeah, and I think Flying Terra, King Gambit, and Rain has looked really good throughout this tournament, and it just has a lot of defensive synergies, right? And so, yep, I think that makes a ton of sense here. It's relatively safe, and you're not threatening that much from the opposing side, but Tauros is going to kick us off with the Protect here as well, and so we'll see if, yeah, the King Gambit targets the Golden Go slot.
Golden Go using the Make It Rain. So you do remove that, that steel defense that the King Gambit would have here. So this Make It Rain is still going to deal so much damage. So, like, that absolutely hurts. The Kowtow Cleave is going to come back out here, and Golden Go, I think, has done its job, though. Will faint here, but now Gio gets a free switch into something in the back. Maybe you can bring back in that Gothitelle, or what is that fourth and final Pokemon? It will be that Dragonite. That has an option to come in here, too.
Oh, that Dragonite's looking really, really strong as a late game option, but I like the decision to go Gothitelle here first, because you know Meowscarada just protected, and so now you've trapped it in. You can just potentially click Fake Out onto that slot. And so, yeah, I think Gio having a little bit of better luck this time around relative to that first game, and he's gotten 3 critical hits. I don't think the first 2 mattered at all, but that one was actually really critical onto King Gambit and just getting a huge amount of burst damage off, and this King Gambit does not have Protect either. So, yeah, Gothitelle is relatively safe to switch into right now. Aaron can consider going for a double Protect here with Meowscarada, but opts not to go for it.
Yeah, so I don't even know if that really would have paid off here either. Maybe it gives King Gambit a bit of a chance to get another knockout, but wow, this is how the Rain can really pay off just a little bit there, eating up some of the damage from the Flare Blitz, but the Brick Break too, just not enough to be able to get through that Tauros. The Rain is gone. So that does make things a little tricky when Aaron only has the Farigiraf left here too to be able to bring in, but kind of interesting to see that one come through.
Yeah, Farigiraf is interesting because it does block those priority extreme speeds from the Dragonite, but Dragonite might just be content ending this game with Dragon Claws at this point in the match. And so Gothitelle is a little bit less value now. You can't really trap things in because, well, the Pokemon are the last 2 remaining Pokemon, but there's Sucker Punch to start things off onto the Tauros, and that will get the knockout. But I think that makes sense. You really don't want to, like, risk switching in Dragonite at this point, especially because it has the multi-scale. And Hypnosis connects!
Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, that's definitely one way for this to go. Maybe you missed the Will-O-Wisp, but of course that is less accurate. Hypnosis will hit its mark, so a little bit of karmic justice here coming through here for Gio after that unlucky turn. But Dragonite now making an appearance in this game number 2. And with Farigiraf off the board right now, Dragonite can just go for some hefty Dragon Claws.
Yeah, I love the Dragon Claw Heal Pulse play. You know that the King Gambit can't Protect, right? And so you can just knock it out. Yeah, maybe King Gambit can Sucker Punch you. I think that's really the best option, and maybe hope for a quick wake up with the Farigiraf. You can crit like Dazzling Gleam, for example, but Dragon Claw will just finish off the King Gambit here. And yeah, that Hypnosis connection, definitely a big deal in denying a potential Trick Room that previous turn. And so, yeah, Hypnosis is one of those moves where you really just can really bail you out of tough positions. And I love the Heal Pulse. Heal Pulse, one of my favorite moves on Gothitelle. That gets Dragonite all the way back up to full HP. Okay, wakes up.
Dazzling Gleam?
Yeah, I don't think that's really doing too much.
You were hopeful, maybe a crit gets to come through, but nope. I mean, even Gothitelle at that point gets a chance to recover that HP with its Citrus Berry after getting chunked down to that 50% mark. And Gio trying to wrap up this game number 2 and bring us into a game number 3 with this Dragon Claw and the follow-up here from the Gothitelle, just to try to keep the Dragonite safe.
How fun is this synergy, though, between the Heal Pulse and the multi-skill Dragonite, right? You just keep allowing it to tank up these attacks, and so, like, there's a critical hit, but that does so little. That was on the Gothitelle, not Dragonite, but yeah, this was a very clean end game here, and I think one thing that's interesting is I think Gio may be taking advantage of the lack of protects on Pokemon like Fergaraf, Pelipper, and the King Gambit, and so we're going to go to a Game 3. I hope for a slightly cleaner Game 3, but it feels like maybe justice was served in the end, right? I feel like Gio maybe should have won that first one. The Will-O-Wisp doesn't miss, and then in this game, I think, yeah, that crit onto King Gambit certainly helped. I am curious how much, like, Choice Band Dragon Claw would have done to King Gambit if the Make It Rain did not get a critical hit in that position, because King Gambit is really bulky. I'd actually expected to survive there, so that might, like, have changed the outcome of the game, of course, but we're going to go to Game 3, and Gio, you know, completely changed up the strategy by leading Gothitelle in that previous game, and I thought it was interesting adaptation, but I think Aaron actually, you know, played through that early game quite nicely.
But it is time for game number 3, and the winner of this game will advance on to the top 4 here at the San Diego Regional Championships. Let's see what the leads are. Aaron sending out Meowscarada and King Gambit. On the other side here, Gio with the Tauros and the Golden Go.
Okay, we're going to get a little bit Intimidate, Defiant action, Mirror Herb, so turn 1 is already going to be very, very spicy here. And I think it's tricky, like, being in positions like this because, yeah, the Tauros gets the boost, but this is actually really interesting, right? Because I think, like, King Gambit's main solution around this is to go for that Terra and go for flying, but Golden Go with that flying Terra is actually fairly... Golden Go against the flying Terra, you can go for Make It Rain, for example. It looks like here Gio's actually willing to play a little bit more defensively, maybe switch out the Golden Go, but it does open up the opportunity for some heavy offense from the opposing side. For example, I think one thing that could be a disaster here is if the Meowscarada just, like, pivoted out into the Pelipper, and then the, you know, you just go for a Terra with the King Gambit and just target down the Golden Go slot. So this can be a really, really explosive run on turn 1. There's the Pelipper switch in.
Yep, the Pelipper is going to switch in here, set up the Rain, but you saw that Gio was going for a switch as well. So Golden Go getting swapped out here for the Talonflame. I mean, you saw that the Wide Lens wasn't quite enough to be able to ensure that Will-O-Wisp, but maybe as well could be a safe switch in for something like a knockoff going into that Golden Go slot. But it's time to Terra as well, as the King Gambit does play this a bit more defensively and just goes for that Flying Terra type once again.
And really curious where the targeting is going in, but either way, yeah, I think the Flying Terra plus the Rain has proven to be a very consistent combo. But it is the Sucker Punch that's absolutely huge for Gio. Well done, does not get caught off guard by that. And the reason that's such a big deal is because now you have Will-O-Wisp pressure once again into King Gambit. And so I think if you're able to burn the King Gambit, it's obviously absolutely huge. It shuts down kind of that attack boost that I got from Defiant earlier. Pelipper is actually incredible offensively into both of these Pokemon right now, however. And I think one of the decisions you might want to make if you're Aaron is, do I just stay in with King Gambit? Do I actually consider a switch out here? But yeah, you know, the Talonflame applies a lot of pressure right now onto both slots, either with the Will-O-Wisp onto King Gambit, or as you say, I feel like Gio's maybe considering a cheeky little Terra here. You could go for Terra Brave Bird and, you know, really snipe down the Pelipper if you think King Gambit's going to switch out.
The Gale Wings is able to help out with the Brave Bird too. So you're just going to go for it here. Gio's sending it with that Terra flying onto the Talonflame. Going to go ahead and give that Brave Bird double stab. And so now that's like, that could just be enough here. We'll get that increased priority from that Gale Wing, so we'll be the first thing to move on the field since that Talonflame is at full HP and that Pelipper takes about half, maybe a bit less than you were hoping for. But the close combat follow-up?
Oh, it gets the knockout, though! Wow! Man. That is absolutely huge. I thought if Pelipper survives here, this game honestly feels pretty over because you could retaliate back with 2 potential double knockouts here. But Flying Terra there, yeah, just does enough to put it in close combat KO range. Now the Cleave will knock out the Talonflame, so a very aggressive trade so far. And this means now that, you know, you actually don't have the ability to burn the King Gambit, and so King Gambit's still looking pretty scary in the rain. But yeah, like, one of the tricky things here as well is, like, it's fairly hard to actually bring in that Golden Go because you're worried about that Sucker Punch, right? And so I feel like Gio here more or less forced to bring out the Dragonite. If you were to bring out Golden Go, you'd be basically forced to protect with it, but the problem is that Tauros, even with these attack boosts, just doesn't do very much damage to a Flying Terra King Gambit.
Yeah, I mean,
oh!
Whoa, no way.
Would you
we actually get
believe
the
it?
Dreadnought. Okay, I can't believe it, Aaron. We actually get to see the Dreadnought in action. We hadn't seen any of these kind of obvious, more kind of consistent duos here from Aaron.
Oh, I love the adjustment, though. I think Dreadnought is so good here.
It's so good.
Oh, and like a part of the thing is because there was no Will-O-Wisp onto King Gambit earlier. Like King Gambit's looking so scary with this Sucker Punch pressure. Dreadnaught has so much offensive pressure onto either slot here.
Swift swim too, so it's going to be moving ultra fast. And unfortunately, you know, while Tauros did get the Mirror Earth, you still have the Defiant boost on the King Gambit.
Yeah.
So it's been just pressuring a ton of offense in this game. So Tauros going to protect, try to eat up any of the damage coming its way, but the Sucker Punch of the Dragonite. Oh my gosh.
That is now going to break the multi-scale. Here's Rock Slide. Is it able to connect? It does connect, and it gets the KO.
No way! Dreadnought putting in so much work here. Rock Slide, not a move that we've seen too often on many of the Pokemon sets that we've seen in this tournament, but now Gio is down to his final 2 Pokemon in this best of 3, where this is going to be it.
Oh my goodness! And now you can just Sucker Punch into the King Gambit slot, into the Golden Go slot, and Dreadnought can just go for liquidation onto Tauros, and just Tauros, just even with the Mirror, you know, in the rain against his Flying Terror, just can't do very much damage. Amazing play by Aaron there to just snipe off the Dragonite, realizing, hey, Dragonite's the only thing that's really pressuring me. Tauros isn't that scary. Of course, there was the ability for Tauros to potentially, you know, go for close combat, but there's Sucker Punch into Golden Go. That is a KO, and this late game Dreadnought does not come out for the first 2 games. Now comes out and sweeps this endgame, gets the liquidation off into Tauros, and Aaron's going to move on to top 4 here in San Diego.
Absolutely unreal performance coming out from Aaron. Just to be able to make that adjustment in that final game. Saw that there really was no threat of that Meowscarada.